Tom Wilcox watched with narrowed eyes as Elijah Briggs stepped out his truck and began unloading boxes with quiet, deliberate movements. The man didn't say much, just worked with a kind of discipline that irritated Tom more than he could explain. This wasn't just some city guy looking for peace and quiet. No, this was something else. Something worse. Tom's lip curled. He could smell the problem already. Elijah didn't belong in Ash Grove, and Tom's clan had a long tradition of reminding folks what happened when the wrong kind of man got too comfortable in their corner of Georgia. 3 nights later, a wooden cross was planted in Elijah's yard, not burned, not flashy, just placed there carefully, like a handshake made of threats. But what Tom Wilcox didn't see behind Elijah's calm, measured eyes was 21 years of Delta Force warfare. Control violence. Lethal training buried beneath civilian respectability. And when Tom's crew circled the farmhouse later that summer, torches in hand, thinking they were about to show Elijah what fear looked like, they had no idea. Elijah Briggs was about to show them what real education looked like. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you absolutely do not want to miss. The gravel crunched under Elijah Briggs' boots as he stepped out his black pickup truck, surveying the 52 acres that now belonged to him. Rolling hills stretched beyond a tree line of gnarled oaks, their limbs hanging like weary elders who'd seen too much. The 2-story farmhouse at the center of the land was weathered but sound, with bleached silver by time, its porch sagging like it held the secrets of the land. "This'll do," Elijah murmured, pulling a heavy duffel bag from the truck bed. His voice was low, steady, the voice of a man used to speaking only when necessary. 21 years of Delta Force service had taught him to value 3 things: silence, simplicity, and space. And this quiet corner of Georgia, just outside a town called Ash Grove, offered all 3. The farmhouse had no close neighbors, no noisy streets, and most importantly, no one watching. Or so he thought. Elijah had arrived quietly, no fanfare, no announcement. But the kind of man he was didn't need noise to make an impression. Tall, dark-skinned, carved from discipline and shadow. When he walked into Murphy's Hardware the next morning, the town noticed. Conversations died. Men with ball caps and worn flannel stared as he passed, their eyes narrowing with something deeper than curiosity. "Need help with something?" asked the clerk, a wiry man with a drawl that sounded like it had been passed down through generations. "Just browsing," Elijah replied, picking up hinges, screws, a deadbolt, and a motion sensor kit. Subtle upgrades. The kind of upgrades you made when you didn't trust anyone. At checkout, the clerk tilted his head. "You the fella bought the old Whitmore place?" "That's right. Been empty a long while. Folks be curious about a new face." "I'm not here to cause trouble." "Trouble's funny," the man said, sliding the bag across the counter. "It don't always wait for an invitation." The first warning came 3 days later. A cross, crude, maybe 2 feet tall, was planted in the front yard at dawn. Not burned, not loud, just present, deliberate. Elijah stood over it for a long moment. No reaction, no rage, just calculation. He yanked it out, carried it to his barn, and laid it on his workbench. He took photos, documented the soil disturbance, and uploaded it to a private server encrypted with military-grade protocols. Step 1, he thought, they're testing my reaction. What the men who left that message didn't know was that Elijah had spent his career tracking insurgents in places where law ended at the edge of the last checkpoint. He'd read patterns in tire tracks, seen death in shadows, and survived ambushes meant for ghosts. A few men with torch dreams and bad history didn't rattle him, but they did interest him. That night, he set up motion-triggered cameras in the trees, angled floodlights to cover all approaches, and checked his service pistol. Not out of fear, but principle. By week 2, tires were slashed. Phone lines were cut. The cameras caught grainy footage of hooded figures circling the house. At 2:13 a.m., Elijah didn't report it. He logged it. He filed it. He prepared. The escalation came on a Friday. Elijah had just returned from the feed store when he noticed movement in the tree line. 5, no 6 figures. Spacing suggested formation. They flanked his home, blocking the front and back. This was no teenage prank. He moved without panic, grabbed his sidearm, checked the chamber, secured all doors, pulled blackout curtains. From his upstairs window, he watched them light torches, not just for intimidation, but for control. Fire reduced visibility. Smoke played hell with aim. They wanted him scared. Instead, they got educated. As two approached the porch, a tripwire-triggered smoke flare exploded in a hiss of white fog. Confused shouts followed. Another man hit a pressure sensor that launched a stun grenade, non-lethal, disorienting, terrifying in the dark. Someone screamed. One dropped their torch and bolted. Elijah emerged from the side, moving with surgical precision. Two warning shots in the air sent the rest scrambling. Only one man remained, frozen, disoriented, trying to lift his friend. Elijah aimed at his feet. "Walk away, while you still can." The man looked up, his eyes wide with a sudden realization that they weren't hunting a victim. They'd found something else entirely. Word spread fast in Ash Grove. The sheriff came by the next morning. Not to help, to warn. "Folks around here don't respond well to people who fight back," he said, eyeing Elijah's house like it had grown teeth. Elijah said nothing, just handed him a flash drive with footage from the night before. "What's this?" "Insurance." Within a month, 3 arrests were made. 2 were dropped for lack of evidence. But the federal interest had already been piqued. Agents began asking questions. Elijah provided answers, dates, footage, receipts. By summer, the Ash Grove Heritage League, a polite name for a racist network, had been dismantled. 9 men were indicted on federal hate crime and conspiracy charges. Their leader, a man named Buck McAllister, tried to flee to Mississippi. Elijah helped track him. He didn't want headlines, didn't care for medals. But when asked by a local reporter why he'd stayed through it all, Elijah simply said, "Because men like that bet on silence. I was never good at being quiet." The morning sun sliced through the windshield as Caleb Briggs guided his all-terrain SUV around the bend into Hollow Creek, Georgia, a town his father had once warned him never to return to. But that was then. Now, with Elijah Briggs 6 years buried under Carolina soil and the old farmhouse legally his, Caleb wasn't here for sentiment. He was here for closure. What he didn't realize, closure had a price. The farmhouse stood unchanged, white siding a little grayer, the porch swing still groaning under the breeze like it remembered the weight of stories. Caleb stepped out, his boots hitting gravel just as his father's had 30 years before. Only this time, he wasn't a Delta Force operator. He was an ex-intel analyst from Army Cyber Command. Lean, quiet, but dangerous in ways most men wouldn't understand until it was too late. He wasn't looking for war. But war had a way of finding his bloodline. The first day was quiet. Second, too. Third day, things started moving. A white sedan trailed him into town when he went to get groceries. A neighbor who hadn't spoken in years suddenly warned him to keep to his side of the county. And someone left a bullet casing in his mailbox with a note. "We ain't forgot what your daddy did." Caleb read it in silence. No fear, just facts. Because Caleb, like his father, had learned to study patterns. Patterns meant intention. Intention meant structure. And structure meant vulnerability. That night, he fired up a secure laptop, spun up a network scan across Hollow Creek's internet nodes. Within hours, he'd pinpointed a private encrypted chat server running off a decommissioned water tower substation. Unusual bandwidth spikes. Encrypted tunnels. Messages referencing reclamation, cleansing, and Briggs' blood. They weren't just watching. They were organizing. Caleb embedded himself, spoofed a digital fingerprint, and slipped into network under the alias Ridgewatch 88. The chat logs were worse than expected. Images, maps, militia drills. They called themselves the Ridge, a successor movement to the Hollow Suns. Same beliefs, but with upgraded tech, upgraded rifles, and younger, angrier leadership. And at the center, Pastor Earl Jennings, a man who held Sunday sermons with one hand on the Bible and the other on a Scope Remington 700. He'd never forgotten what Elijah Briggs did to his father's generation. And now, with Elijah gone, the son would do just fine. Caleb documented everything. Screen recordings, server logs, timestamps, location data. Every message they sent became a thread and a noose they were unknowingly tying for themselves. But he knew information wasn't enough. These men were planning an activation event, a live-streamed intimidation raid on his home. Time for July 4th, the same day his father had once defended the land decades ago. They planned to circle the property, light a cross, and force him out with humiliation broadcast to their online followers. They didn't know Caleb had already reinforced the house. Motion sensors, shock traps, 4K drone cameras, non-lethal perimeter weapons, and a backup generator that ran independently of the grid. This wasn't a home. It was a defense post. The night of July 4th came like thunder. At exactly 11:57 p.m., for vehicles approached, headlights cut, tires crunching dirt. Caleb's drones tracked them from 2 miles out. 12 men, AR-style rifles, GoPros mounted to helmets. One wore a skull mask. They surrounded the house, whispering in radios. Light it up. As one man struck a match to the base of a pre-assembled wooden cross, Caleb hit the trigger on his app. Boom! A non-lethal shockwave erupted from buried charges on the gravel, sending 2 attackers flying backward. The cross was knocked flat. Men scattered, screaming. Panic spread through their comms. What the? Then the floodlights came on. Every tree, every angle, exposed like a stage. Caleb's voice came through their radios. You brought your cameras. I brought mine. On a high tower camera, Pastor Jennings was visible, watching from a parked van half a mile away. Smile, Caleb whispered. The feed switched. Every attacker's face lit up on Caleb's stream, broadcast via backup satellite feed straight to a private YouTube Live link he'd set to send the moment any motion sensors triggered. The stream went viral within hours. By morning, their names were trending. The FBI showed up by noon. Caleb handed them a hard drive labeled Phase 1. They didn't even ask how he got it. They didn't need to. The Ridge was dismantled within 2 weeks. Jennings? Facing federal conspiracy charges. The ringleaders were caught hiding in a cabin near the Alabama line. Some cried. Others tried to talk tough. None lasted more than a day in holding before turning on each other. Back in Hollow Creek, Caleb didn't say much. He didn't hold press conferences, didn't grant interviews. But he did visit the local high school unannounced and spoke briefly to a civics class. Don't fight fire with fire, he told them. Fight it with light. Truth doesn't burn. It blinds. When he returned to the farmhouse that evening, the swing on the porch creaked once, like his father had just sat down beside him. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old flash drive Elijah had once used to log every threat, every tactic. Caleb inserted it into his laptop and added one final entry. They tried again, and again they failed. The name Briggs doesn't mean fear. It means finish what you start.